Hello and welcome back, Jackson Masters. This is Run Boy Run by UnifiedCreations, Chapter 1 and 2. Vecna was winning. 11 wasn't an idiot. She knew that her power had limits, had truly known since she had tried so desperately to move that car in Starcourt Mall, and it hadn't shifted an inch. She'd known when it was her powers, the one true consistent in her life, had deserted her so suddenly after that night. She knew it as his clawed hand began to stretch towards her across the gap that bridged them in the upside down, as she felt her powers begin to flicker and fade. She knew it, but it still hurt. "Come on, let's go!" Steve shouted above the noise of the storm and upside down, reaching out to grab Max's legs and giving her a hoist up the rope hanging from the ceiling, quickly followed by Lucas and Dustin, Robin following quickly, shibbying up the rope with a mantra of "fuck, fuck, fuck." As she disappeared through the portal and Steve knelt to give Nancy a boost up to get them all out as fast as possible, a dreadful hoarse scream tore through the noise of the storm, making Steve and Eddie whip around as Nancy's legs disappeared through the portal. 11. Steve whispered, horror in his voice as he darted to the window. 11? Eddie repeated, freezing in place as it hit him. Her name wasn't Elle or Jane. She wasn't just a girl with superpowers from California who happened to know the Hawkins kids. Fuck, she must have moved when that kid Will had. Eddie was stupid. He was so stupid. But she's weird, 3 whispered, catching 9's attention. He turned his head just a little, knowing how badly 3 would react to any of the other children listening to him. Seriously, she's so weak and she never talks. I don't know why he keeps paying attention to her. 5 scoffed, rolling her eyes. He just wants a pet, obviously. The older children laughed cruelly, and 9 shifted, waiting until they left the room before he stood and observed. They were right, sort of. 11 was different from the others. Her powers never seemed to develop properly. She was so small, even next to the younger numbers, and she just never spoke. When she did, it was in short, chopped sentences, like you had to wrench the words from her. 9 watched as 11 slotted another red disc into the peg wall, watching it bounce off the wooden pegs all the way down to the 9 slot. She gave a tiny huff, her forehead creasing in irritation as she sat up to insert another. Stepping a little closer, 9 paused as she turned her head, minutely aware of his position. He paused for a moment before walking closer, before settling down next to her. She side-eyed him for a moment, unsure of his presence, before she slowly held out one of the red discs. He took it, kneeling up as she did to the slot and to the top of the board. It bounced down to the bottom, 2 pairs of eyes watching its guided descent as it landed in the 11 space. Feeling 11's eyes move to him, 9 turned and gave a small smile. For the first time he'd ever seen, she smiled back. A week later, they were all gone. Eddie had done a lot of running recently. He'd run when Chrissy died, when Jason and his gang was hunting him, when the cops gave his name to the town, which started a witch hunt for the freak. He'd run from it all and more. He'd run from the lab. He'd run from Papa. He couldn't run anymore. Eddie, we have to go. What are you doing? Steve moved away from the window, starting for the rope before he paused as Eddie headed towards the door. Running, Eddie replied, putting an arm up to shield his face from the storm as he sprinted into the eye of it. Eddie! Steve's scream was lost to the raging wind as Eddie ran through the howling darkness, red and black clashing together as it whipped up the dirt and debris and absolute shit that covered the ground of the upside down. As he broke through the thick wall of smog, he saw her. 11 was hovering just off the ground, both hands outstretched towards the fleshy fucker floating before her. She was bleeding from her eyes, nose, ears, mouth. Her whole face crumbled as if in agony as Vecna's clawed hand reached for her face. "No!" Eddie screamed, flinging his hand towards the monster, a burst of power he hadn't felt in 10 fucking years exploding from his hand and sending that thing back maybe 20 feet. Not too bad for a skill he hadn't practiced in a decade. As Vecna righted himself, sneering, Eddie finally reached 11 and skidded to his knees as she crumpled to the floor. "Oh, no," he muttered, patting her on the cheek to rouse her. Her eyes were open but unfocused. She looked confused as she looked up on him. Yes! Come on, kid, we got to finish this. We gotta! Propping her up against his chest, Eddie took her left hand in his, resting her wrist over his own. He must have lost his watch somewhere along the way, their number tattoos starkly lining up on pale skin even in the darkness surrounding them. He placed his right hand on her sternum just below her throat, hugging her close. You can do this, he whispered, as much to himself as to her. 11. 9? She whispered back, turning her head just enough to see his face. Yeah, it's me, kid. He gave what he hoped was a reassuring smile, seeing Vecna close in on them out of the corner of his eye. Let's finish this. Together. Closing his eyes, feeling like a coward to the end, Eddie, 9, pressed his hand against 11's chest and surging the power simmering under his skin into her. Her eyes opened comically wide, a dark light filling them as her right hand shot up and their combined powers blasted out of her hands with a ferocity she hadn't felt in ever. They could do this. What are they doing? They should be through by now, Dustin fretted, ripping his cap off, tugging at his hair in frustration. We need to give them time, yeah? Maybe they're waiting for 11 to finish, right? Robin replied anxiously, biting at the nails of one of her hands before gagging at the upside-down gunk stuck under them. Yeah, that's it. They'll be through soon. Nancy agreed, watching the portal with hawk-like eyes. There was silence for a moment. I'm gonna go check on them. Nancy and Dustin spoke at the same time before whipping around to face each other. The hell you are! No, Dustin, I am the adult here. Guys! Lucas pointed at the portal, which suddenly started pulsing a harsh red, black, white, just as Max went ramrod straight before collapsing in a heap on the floor, eyes rolling back into her head as she arched back and screamed. Every light in the trailer blew out. A cacophony of screams followed before the outside of the trailer began to turn dark. Whatever power surged, emitting from the gate, taking out the local power grid again. Max! Lucas shouted, dropping to his knees beside her as she went limp on the floor. That's it, I'm going. Nancy reached for the rope blindly, jumping as Dustin managed to find a flashlight and flick it on. Wait, there! He pointed towards the top of the rope, which had started swinging. It's them! Robin jumped up from the bed, holding her hands as if to help someone down. 11 came, or fell, through first, her shaved head appearing for a moment before she tumbled down onto the bed. Robin managed to just about catch her, so she landed somewhat carefully before Nancy helped pull her off the bed and onto the floor so she wouldn't get landed on by anyone else. Elle! Lucas helped lay her next to Max, who had streaks of blood coming from her face but was breathing and alive. She's alive, her heart's beating, Nancy reported, holding her fingers to Elle's pulse point on her throat. Keep trying to wake her up, maybe she's just drained again. Nancy! Robin's panicked voice came from behind her as Nancy turned just as Eddie emerged from the portal, much the same way 11 had. He had felled heavily onto the bed on his back, splayed out like one of the specimens they dissected at school, face obscured by his thick curly hair. Get him off the bed before Steve comes through, Nancy ordered, wedging an arm beneath his legs to move him. Guys? Dustin spoke from behind her, sounding shell-shocked. He was pointing to Eddie's bare wrist, strikingly familiar numbers peeking out from beneath his leather sleeve. What is that? Silence reigned in the trailer for a moment before a hand appeared at the top of the rope, Steve finally emerging last. Move! Nancy shouted, dragging Eddie halfway off the bed as Steve made his slightly less dramatic entrance. A cough made everyone in the room jump as Max startled upright, nearly headbutting Lucas as he bent over her. Is everyone alright? Steve barked as he dragged himself off the bed, looking around at the scattered bodies across the room. A general groan was the reply, and as she shook his head, he ruffled Dustin's hair. How are they? Steve tilted Eddie's head towards them, brushing his hair from his face to reveal blood streaks from just about every orifice to match 11's. Metal, he imagined Eddie saying, as if he saw himself. "Steve, did you know about this?" Dustin had Eddie's wrist in his hand, thumb swiping over the tattoo as if he thought he could wipe it off. "No, I didn't. Not until he ran out in the middle of that fucking storm, grabbed 11, and they obliterated that fucker," Steve replied tensely, doing a head count before collapsing on the floor. "Fuck. What happened?" Max groaned as she gripped her head, wiping her face with her sleeve and smearing blood everywhere. "They won, right?" Robin said hopefully, looking between 11 and Eddie. "They won?" "Yeah, they won. I think, anyways. The whole of that shithole looked like it was crumbling to dust when we got out. I don't know if it can support itself without that fucker powering it." Steve wiped a hand over his face, grimacing as he felt a headache forming. "God, I need a shower." "I rather think you all do." The conscious people in the room startled, and Steve immediately lunged for his bat as Nancy pulled her handgun out of wherever she had stashed it. A man was standing in the doorway in a long black coat, a pale gray suit, and impeccably clean shoes. His white hair was styled perfectly, although the scar on his face took away from his rather polished exterior. "Who the fuck are you?" Steve demanded, wincing as the bite on his torso burned under the hasty bandages. The man's mouth twitched in what was not quite a smile. "I am Dr. Brennan, 11's guardian." The smile stayed on his face, although it didn't reach his eyes. "I take it she was successful in her mission?" Steve and Nancy exchanged a fast, concerning glance before Robin stood up in front of Eddie, drawing Dr. Brennan's attention. "Why should we tell you? How do we know that we can trust you?" she questioned, trying to hide the shake in her voice. Dr. Brennan opened his mouth to reply before his eyes caught on to something, and he stopped dead. Following his gaze, Steve felt a rush of terror up through him as he realized the older man's eyes had caught onto Eddie's number tattoo, still in Dustin's grip. A beat passed before Brennan took a step forward, pausing only when Nancy shot up from her position on the floor. "Come any closer and I will shoot you," she threatened quietly, a hand barely shaking where she held her gun. Brenner held both his hands up placatingly, rocking back on his heel just a little. "I'm not here to hurt them," he offered, eyes moving to 11's prone form on the floor. Max and Lucas crouched beside her protectively. "You've all been through quite a terrible ordeal, and we are here to offer help. You should listen to him." A new voice came from the doorway as a shorter, stockier man appeared and offered them an easy smile. He's the one who helped 11 get her powers back, after all. And that is it for today, folks. Anyone who's here from my Mex Podfic series, hi! Glad you're coming to see me do other stuff. I'm taking this series both as this is one of my most beloved fics, like Carnal Pages, and I just need a palate cleanser from TMA and Mech stuff, honestly. I might do one of my Sandersides fics that I've written last year at some point. I don't know, it's been fun. I'm just glad I don't have to do British accent the whole dang time of recording. I don't know if I accidentally slipped into a British accent at all during recording. It'd be funny though, see if anyone caught anything, because I didn't. Oh gosh, I absolutely love Steddie and Stranger Things. I'm absolutely pissed by the finale, by the way. Hopper had this whole fantastic speech about to keep on going even after 11 and her sister had gone through all that abuse, and then they fucking kill them off. There is an argument that could be made that 11 is still alive, but there's still the fact that they brought back such a cool character to kill her. And also kill her entire found family. Good God. Anyways, I'm upset about the finale, and this fic specifically has been the finale in my brain for the past... How long has it been since I read this? I don't know. 2 years? this is what's been the finale half the time anyway in my brain. You know, yeah. Anyway, also, I accidentally made Brenner, a little bit like Elias. Oops. It's honestly hilarious to think about that maybe Elias just somehow transferred worlds after the whole season 4 finale and instead became another awful old person and done all this terrible things and once again with all his knowledge of previous worlds just to do criminally insane things again. Also, I don't trust Dr. Owens. I know he's kind of alright, but like, he dismisses what Brennan has done a little bit, just a tad. Maybe let's not, because he did abuse children. Anyways, I hope you all had a good day today. And as always, drink water. It's important. You need it not to die.